been a while. It's Tracey Welson-Rossman coming back to you from my home office. Again, I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Chariot Solutions, and we're here with a new episode of 15 Minutes With. So I'm really excited to welcome to the Philadelphia area the new CEO and President of the Science Center in Philadelphia, Tiffany Wilson. And Tiffany, thank you so much for being with us. I know you don't start till the beginning of October, but I thought maybe you could give a little background about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really a pleasure. I can't wait to get up to Philadelphia and get to work. So my background, I've spent the last almost 20 years in medical device innovation, the first 10 of which in medical device startups, where I spent time wearing all the different hats and living all the different challenges that medtech startups face as they move from preclinical studies and prototyping to commercialization. About almost 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to operationalize a nonprofit here in Atlanta, where I am now, the Global Center for Medical Innovation. And that's really where I started to get exposed to the realities of startups and the challenges that innovators face, and the broader challenges when we talk about ecosystem development and innovation, entrepreneurship, and workforce. And so I was brought on board to operationalize GCMI. Today we are about 60 people. We work with innovators and entrepreneurs from all around the world to really help them design, build, test, and commercialize new technology.
And I know that you're just starting at the Science Center, but if you could give me a little background on the Science Center, what its role is, and I will not be asking you what your plans are since you haven't started yet, but just your understanding of where the Science Center fits within the ecosystem in Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still in learning mode, so I've got the basics down, but I've got a whole team to learn from over the next quarter, which I'm looking forward to. But the Science Center has been around since the early 1960s. It's the oldest urban research technology park in the country. And I think what's been fascinating to me to see the evolution of where it started off very much from a real estate perspective and having that presence and helping boost the west side of Philadelphia through supporting innovations coming out of the meds and eds in the greater Philadelphia region. Where it is today and what really drew me to the opportunity was not only the impressive real estate presence that enables and facilitates a lot of these inventions and startup activities to help them get to the point where they're fundable and they can grow and attract investment and create jobs, but really the programming around that. And so in particular, the commercialization programs and the opportunities to build more commercialization activities to really help promising startups get the best start and get to the point where they are able to attract investment and create jobs in the Philadelphia region versus having to go to, say, Boston or New York or the West Coast, right, to plug into that. The other aspect of it that I think is exciting and I'm certainly very passionate about is in the cultivation of the workforce. And so thinking about middle school and high school students, those underserved communities, to provide exposure to STEM careers so that we start to, in the region, have a strong pipeline of workers who can, as the startups grow and evolve, we've got the workforce there to really strengthen the overall ecosystem. And then the fun part for me that I've seen, leveraging the real estate is really the convening aspect of the Science Center. And so, based on everywhere I've been all around the world in innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems, the enthusiasm and the community spirit there in Philadelphia is certainly, worthy of noting.
Well, thank you. So from the chariot side of my life, definitely have been seeing technology bump up a lot more towards the healthcare side, not just the
Right.
traditional, we're writing healthcare software, but working with biotechs, with medical device companies from an IoT standpoint. I just wanted to, get your viewpoint on, where you think, why this is happening, and do you see an acceleration due to, the pandemic?
Yeah, so it has been interesting because on the medical device side, I started, first company I got involved with was in tissue engineering. So there was nothing electronic or digital about that. Second startup that I was involved with, we started to play with not only, the physical devices, but putting sensors and software. And starting to see people work together in a different way. So technologists, you would have hardware and software engineers, mechanical engineers who would all of a sudden be having to sit around the table together in a way that they haven't had to work. So just from an interpersonal standpoint, it was fascinating just to watch those dynamics. But really about a decade ago, we started to see the strong convergence of what I kind of refer to as classic medical devices, mechanical type devices, where digital health was hot and getting funding. And so people were wanting to put sensors and software and build online databases. And, a decade ago, people really didn't know what data they needed to collect or how they were going to monetize it. But from an investment standpoint, it addressed a trend. And what's been fascinating to watch over, the last 5 years or so is, the continued convergence of all those. But then as big data has evolved, the analytics pieces, so that overall infrastructure has continued to evolve, where now people are learning how to monetize it and are able to analyze the data sets in a way that they weren't able to before. I think as it relates to the pandemic, and what I'm excited about the pathway forward is, the pandemic forced providers and payers to figure out telemedicine, right? And so I think the constraints are back on in some way, shape, or form now, but there's enough of an opportunity of now we have to figure out how to see patients remotely, how to monitor high-risk patients not in a healthcare setting. And then how do you make the business case work for that, where all parties, you're creating wins for all parties. And so that's where I see, the pandemic, until we really have a vaccine, we're going to continue have to be, as an overall sector, have to be curious about that and open to addressing the problems. And so I think COVID really forced it a lot faster than it would have otherwise evolved on its own.
Right. And I think we'll see that acceleration happening. These are trends that were happening anyway. So
they were. And COVID, it's fascinating. We at GCMI now have been doing a lot of work in rapid production and distribution of PPE. And it's been involved, working with partners that we'd never worked with before. And because there was the urgency there.
Right.
And so I think overall as a society, we are learning how to work with people that we've not worked together anymore to solve problems, real urgent problems. And kind of, it almost forces you to put the ego aside a little bit, right? And figure out why we're all in this healthcare industry in the first place is because it's to benefit patients.
Right.
And so COVID is forcing us to think about things in a different way. So I think the challenge will be once we achieve some kind of normalcy again, where we're not all running around with masks and hand sanitizer, and social distancing. So how do we not lose sight of that?
Right. Right.
Right.
And get back into old habits. So,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just having that conversation with somebody on a different topic, but, so we're 15 minutes with, I think we're probably going to run over, but I do have one last question, which I think is really important. I'm always excited to see when, we have the first, boundary breaker. So you're the first female CEO president we've seen at the Science Center in a great while. One of the things that I've been seeing across the board is more women who are founding healthcare or life sciences companies or leading them. Really seeing this as a trend. At least that's my hypothesis. So I thought I'd ask you, from your perspective, do you agree with that? And if you do or don't, why you're seeing it, why you're not seeing it, and what we can do to encourage more diversity.
So I love that question, and I've had the privilege of getting to see it from a global lens, and so I think it depends where you are. We had this week, I'm the founder of MedTech Women at the Southeast Life Sciences Association, which we launched 5 years ago. And really, one was the obvious of how do we see more women in the C-suite in the MedTech sector and help each other do that. The other was, though, I was seeing a lot of clinicians and so doctors and engineers. We know they're inventing a lot, but I don't see them leading as much as they should, and not in the Southeast. And we've had that discussion within the Southeast, and it is a challenge. The kind of good old boy Southern stereotypes, they do still exist. And I think there's an appetite for doing that. When I talk to my colleagues here in the Southeast region who are starting companies around healthcare, who are women, they're really driven to solve a problem. They're frustrated with a problem versus the coolness factor of having a technology startup, right? Yeah. So there's a frustration there that they really want to solve. Now, I've been doing, when you look at the West Coast, when you look at the Northeast, it's more normal to see women founding companies, I think, just from a culture standpoint. So I certainly want to continue to be involved in those efforts. But the other aspect that I really, that has been fascinating is the past 3 years, I've been doing a lot of work in Israel. And there are a lot of female founders in Israel around healthcare technologies. And what I see there is twofold. One, very driven by the problem, the unmet needs, and that are frequently women's issues that are underserved and overlooked. The other thing interesting about Israel is that everybody serves in the military. And so that is, in some level, I mean, it's not across the board, but it is an equalizer when it comes to, gender bias within fundable startups and things like that. And then certainly, when you look at the Science Center and the Launch Lane and Digital Health Accelerator there, just the methodology of selecting companies for that program is specifically designed to give everyone a fair shot, not just men and women, but, race, addressing race inequalities as well, and race inequalities in entrepreneurship. So lots of opportunity for us moving forward.
Well, I love how you say that women have a tendency to solve for the problem, and then the technology comes second. And that is, something that we believe in the nonprofit that I work with, Tech Girls. So I think it's important for us to understand that as well, that technology, it's not about the latest and greatest, it's about how it fits in. And those seem to be, I think, some of the more successful solutions that come out of it, because you're starting at the point of what are you trying to solve? That's how you create a good business, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Women seem to have that a little bit more, but I will admit I am biased on this. So Thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Philadelphia. And hopefully I will get to meet you in 3D very soon.
One day.
One day, right.
Thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it.